Welcome to the Flux Dev Meeting for May 16th, 2024. We're just getting started here. And anyone who has anything else to add to the agenda for today, please go ahead and do that or mention in the chat. Is there anyone who'd like to start the discussion?
Deepti, go ahead.
Yeah, I can go. So I pasted the Flux CD roadmap in the chat. And I wanted to understand, like in Git repositories, there are two Git integrations. I think there are two topics mentioned over there. One is an RFC for passwordless auth, and the other one is implement workload identity auth for Azure DevOps. I just wanted to understand why there are two line items, and if there is any particular, in your mind, any particular difference between the two.
That is a good question. Does anyone know the answer?
I can try to answer. So you're asking about the first and the second one, right? Passwordless and then Azure DevOps. Why there are two of them, right?
Yep, yeah.
So passwordless is for multiple providers, I guess, for Google Cloud as well. And the second one is for Azure DevOps specifically.
Because like the first one also encompasses Azure DevOps based passwordless auth, right?
Right. Yeah, I think they can be combined.
Or is that is it also an option to kind of have an RFC specifically for implement workload identity auth for Azure DevOps repositories? That's the feature actually that our partners care about. So is it a possibility to add an RFC just for that second one and kind of go ahead with an implementation for that?
I think they are together, right? How does passwordless works in Azure DevOps? Using workload entity, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that the existing RFC would be enough.
Yeah, because I think the existing RFC kind of covers Azure, GCP, and GitHub app, all three of them. I know that there have been requests for enhancements in like the chats and discussions for GitHub app authentication and Azure DevOps, which is for Azure also. There have been requests from our partners. So for the first RFC, I wanted to understand for like for GCP specifically, has there been any customer request or any ask for that? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I think it's just we are trying to unify the implementation, so we just thought of implementing that together.
Okay, because I was just thinking, is it possible to like scope down the RFC to?
I think Stefan wanted to separate them. No, not sure if the RFC, but the implementation. There is an open pull request in package repository, which combines everything together. Stefan wanted to have them implemented separately to make it easier to review and test.
Yeah,
I'm not sure about RFC.
Okay.
But we can, I think, if dividing it into multiple RFCs would make it more detailed, I think that would be better. I think you should do it. You should submit another RFC. We can close this RFC and have multiple small RFCs.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. And last time, actually, Stefan had mentioned that RFCs require like a sponsor from the core team. I wanted to understand what is the role of the sponsor in that RFC?
King, do you know specifically?
I would assume the sponsor is it required to be a maintainer? Was there any discussion about what a sponsor is?
I think that's what I wanted to understand. Like,
I think the answer is that they're the steward to make sure that the code is actually going to be maintained. So
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but one
I think
goal
they
is
will like
to grow the maintainer team, right, and to get maintainers from outside organizations who can support their own code that they're interested in. So that would be maybe a backhanded way of saying a maintainer needs to be involved, and if you want things to move faster, you know, join the
I
team.
think, Kingdon, I think as well, when I was talking to Stefan about this a while ago, it's also to make sure that the RFC aligns with what the project is trying to achieve as well.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely a critical role of the maintainers, sort of consensus building and unified vision.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
is it not documented in the website repository or somewhere in the community, I guess?
The RFC process, actually, that's a good point, is pretty well documented. I haven't read it over in a while, but I'm assuming if
You
it's
have
been,
that link
Not really.
handy. If you could share that, that would be great.
sure.
Thank you.
I think this RFC 0 is the official RFC documentation, and it's comes from this blog post. I'm not sure if there's a process notes other than that. But the pointers to the README in RFCs. So theoretically, everything should be documented here. So if there's something we're absolutely missing, and it needs to go there.
Makes sense.
I don't see much about the role of a sponsor. It might be in community members or community. We have this community roles doc here. Between one of these, it should be documented, but I don't see anything about sponsors and community roles.
Okay, no worries. I think just wanted to understand. And for the first point, I think so. As you said, we'll have. I'll try to have a separate RFC for the Azure DevOps to start with, and then take it forward from there.
Cool. Anyone would like to bring up a topic next?
I can talk about my progress with AWS infrastructure, test infrastructure.
Sure.
So I think a few months ago, we got cloud credits for AWS, and we have to set up the infrastructure to be able to run it. All the actual tests were written already, maybe more than a year or 2 years ago. So we used to have all the code, but we didn't have an account to run those tests. We used to run it on personal accounts at the time. Now we have the AWS credits, we can run it in a Flux account. So I've been working on some tooling to run it properly, especially when CI runs and things fail, there will be some resources left in the accounts and they have to be deleted. We have similar toolings for Azure and Google Cloud. We just use Google Cloud for now because we don't run Azure tests, don't have an account. Also for Google Cloud, we have some tooling to delete all the resources every few hours. In fact, to build something similar for AWS. And for that, I'm using this nuke, it's a Go project. So it can be embedded into our Go tooling to delete all the resources. So I'm just trying to figure out how to configure it so that it deletes certain things that are created by this infrastructure only. And it's been going fine. It should be ready in a few weeks. And once the cleanup is ready, we should be almost ready to deploy it. I have to write some more tooling to make the permissions that we give to these CI jobs more narrow. Right now, when I'm testing, I'm just using a very broad permissions. You have to narrow it down, similar to how we do for Azure and GCP. I think that's it. Any questions I can answer? Or we can move into the next topic.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do we have any other topic? Oh, I can mention Bucket API. We are introducing custom certificate support in Bucket API. There is a pull request which is ready to be merged.
And this would land in 2.4.
Next big release. Yeah. I think it's in the roadmap for the next big release.
Great.
I think we don't have any other planned feature for Bucket. This is the only planned feature. There may be some other things for other APIs. So we can try this and test. We did some testing, but we can try more.
Yeah, I was able to make it work with Minio. Yesterday, we spent some time at Bug Scrub. And there's documentation about it in the pull request for anyone who wants to try. So you don't have to go through all the same setup stuff. We use Cert Manager to create a self-signed certificate, passed it to Minio in the Helm values, and passed it to Flux in the new Cert Secret Ref. Set up client credentials, and that was it. Off to the races with a bucket inside the cluster. So that will be very useful. That's been a use case that I don't think we've been able to support before.
Am I right that that already supports, like the bucket one already supports like S3?
Yes, if you have public cloud S3, or if you have an S3 bucket with an endpoint that has a valid SSL certificate, those would all be okay. But purely in cluster, where you use the cluster kubedns for discovery, and there's no external endpoint, would not have been a supported use case before.
Got it. That makes sense. Thanks.
At least not with encryption. I don't know if we have a way to disable TLS altogether for S3. I haven't seen it. So that's everything that's on the agenda right now. We still have more time. If there's anyone who wants to have any further discussions. Oh, yes. Steve, thank you. We should definitely highlight the fact that the 2.3 Flux release is out. There's a release blog. I don't think it was out. I guess it was out last week. No. Yes, it's new this week. So definitely check out the release blog, check out the release notes. They have a lot of the same information in them. The Helm controller is at GA now, which is amazing. That's been a long time coming. I'm very pleased about that. You can use OCI repository to drive the Helm release now, which is another highly requested feature, as well as the ability to reuse a Helm chart in multiple Helm releases. That means that if you have a lot of different environments that all deploy the same release, you don't need to have Flux won't be creating multiple Helm charts for each of them. If you want, you can create your own Helm chart and include it by ref instead of a spec, which is awesome. We have some new benchmark results that I think the main driver for the performance improvements are these benchmarks are on Kubernetes 129 and above, where we have a much better story for CRD discovery. So the performance, the numbers don't really say everything about the performance, but on clusters with more and more CRDs registered, you will see much better performance than you would have seen before. And if you haven't upgraded to Kubernetes 129 yet, definitely a good time to think about it with Flux 2.3. Sunny, do you want to talk about the image update automation promotion at all?
Yes, image automation has a new API v1 beta 2, and came with refactoring of the whole reconciliation logic. We added support for image policy selector in an image update automation object. So previously, if you create image update automation object in a namespace, it will select all the policies in that namespace. Now you can define which labels, so which policy should be selected using a label selector. And there was one more. Oh, and then another feature is in the message templates for any updates made by image automation. So previously we were able to, in the message template, we were able to add the new version of what was updated. But now we made some changes. There are some internal changes. It's not API, but it's a template level change where you can print the old version and the new version of the images that got updated. It requires some migration for moving to the new template. Those are documented. I think these are the two main features, other than the reconciliation refactoring. I think there's nothing to mention there.
Awesome.
I have one question to ask before. So image automation had this issue where it will send notification always at every reconciliation. Was that fixed before? Do you remember?
I think it's not image automation. I think it's image policy that has that issue. And I don't know the answer if it was ever fixed or not.
I'm sure it's fixed by after the refactoring, but I thought it was image automation. And we used to recommend people to add some ignore rule in the notification controller, others. If it was there, that's also fixed. Now notifications are better. It only notifies when there is something useful, like there is an error recovery or a failure recovery, there is something new. Or there is a failure. It doesn't notify unnecessarily anymore.
That's great. There are a few more things in the release blog. I'll just mention them quickly. The signature verification with notation landed in Flux 2.3. So that's an alternative to cosign that you can use for Helm charts and OCI repositories. And Terraform provider. Steve, do you want to talk about the Terraform provider update?
Yeah, sure. So it got a kind of major refactor. We got rid of some of the old data sources that you would have used previously, like the Flux install and Flux sync. Now we just have Flux Git Bootstrap, and that does the whole thing, kind of wrapping Flux Bootstrap underneath. And yeah, we now have the ability to support air-gapped environments, because I know that was something that was highly requested, as well as kind of better drift detection and correction, because we've kind of got a 3 or 4 way state decision tree to kind of go through when changes are made. So for anyone that's using Flux Bootstrap and doing customizations, it's highly recommended that the customizations that you do make are done in Terraform and remain in Terraform. It gets a little bit sticky, and we've done Stefan has done a good job of kind of fixing those up if changes are made inside of the Git repository. But we've tested when the customization changes are then made to Git and reconciled it with Terraform and make sure that we don't kind of overwrite them. But it is recommended to keep them in the Terraform configuration rather than make the changes directly in the Git repo. Yeah, if anyone has any issues with that when they're using it, reach out and let me know. We also support OpenTofu now. There was an issue with their upstream GitHub action, so it's not in CI as of yet, but it's imminently going to be there. So I was running it locally and testing it locally against the latest 1.7 release of OpenTofu, and it works on 1.7 and 1.6.
That's terrific. And also welcome as a maintainer formally. I think this is your first meeting as a maintainer.
Yeah, thanks. It is. Yeah, a long time coming. I've used it since the early days of V1. So
Great
yeah,
to
it's
have
nice
you.
to give back.
So there are some other miscellaneous improvements mentioned here. I'm just going through the release blog. Breaking changes. I'm not going to mention them all, but I will mention one thing that I observed. User. So formally, we always tell you which versions of Kubernetes we support are the 3 most recent, the 3 supported Kubernetes releases from upstream. And that's mentioned here in supported versions, but informally, we have told people for a long time that Flux will work on older versions of Kubernetes as long as there aren't breaking changes upstream that we need to contend with. Well, at this point, I know that there are some breaking changes, so people who have been on Kubernetes 120 or 122 up to this point will definitely need to upgrade in order to get the latest Flux release. I think I'm not sure where there's a thread in Flux where they worked out exactly which version was the minimum. I want to say 126, but I don't know for sure. But anyway, it is always a good idea to upgrade to a supported release of Kubernetes, and we officially do only support the releases that Kubernetes supports upstream. But if you find issues, please do bring them to us, even if they're with an older release. We'd like to know if it's broken. So. Then there's some mention of the plan for Flux 2.4, which you can find out more about on the roadmap, and we've also had some discussion here. Is there anything else that we should talk about today?
One question I have. And then, don't we support 128 as a minimum?
Sorry, what was that?
Don't we say Kubernetes 128 as the minimum version because of the common expression language requirement in the new CRBs?
It is 128 then. Okay, yeah. It's common expression language. That is the breaking change that I was, yeah, that's the one. So we need at least the version of Kubernetes that has support for common expression language. If that's 128, then that correct what I said earlier. It's not 126. Thank you.
We must be supporting older than 127 though, because in the roadmap, the 2.4 release ends support for 127. So
Maybe
we
it
must
was
be
in beta. Maybe in 128
possibly.
serial became GA, and before it was beta feature,
Yeah, you
which
might
was
be right.
enabled by default.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Any other topic?
Sorry, I just had to step away for a second. I don't have anything else. So
No.
if no one else does,
Nothing from my side.
then I think we can end the meeting. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks all. Have a good rest of your week.
Thank you.
Ew. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.